UKIP in the polls appears to do better among older voters than young voters. The NUS is saying that 197 constituencies can be swayed on the student vote. Do you think that's going to be an issue for UKIP?
Historically, what you say is absolutely right. UKIP has tended to draw support from an older demographic rather than a younger demographic. But I think in the Clacton by-election we saw the opposite. I got proportionately more support from 18 to 34-year-olds than amongst the over 65s. So that can be turned around. I think UKIP appeals in particular to people who are disaffected with the cartel politics, with the cosy clique who run our political system. And I think that message will particularly resonate with younger people. People who've grown up with the notion of choice and competition in all aspects of their lives, where to study, what music to listen to, what to do with their time. I think they will find it extraordinary that we have a political system where 7 out of 10 seats is in effect a rotten borough, a party fiefdom. And so I think UKIP, with its anti-establishment, radical proposition, I think will increasingly appeal to a disaffected younger electorate.
And do you believe that there's still loads to be done in order to get that ideal?
Absolutely.
What can be done then?
Well, in politics, you start with your base, and you have to work out beyond the base. And I'm working with our Key Seats campaign, and we're very much trying to do what we did in Clacton, appealing beyond the base. Political parties like to talk to themselves where they're strongest. UKIP, I think, is a different kind of political party. It's a genuine grassroots organisation, and it's learning how to engage and build support beyond the base. And I think a really important precondition of being able to do that is to make it absolutely crystal clear that UKIP's values are in tune with modern Britain. And there have been in the past, let's go straight to the issue, there have been in the past 1 or 2 people who were standing for UKIP who had views that were pretty obnoxious, pretty offensive, pretty illiberal, and pretty disrespectful to people from different backgrounds, and those individuals are not UKIP candidates. We have to be, as I said in my acceptance speech, a party for all Britain and all Britons, first and second generation, as much as every other. And if we do that, we can build out far beyond our base.
So just drawing that to North-South, Steve Evans went to give a talk before Christmas to students and got quite a hostile reception and had to be postponed. Do you believe that there's still time for that message to resonate within students in the North-South constituency, or do you think that it's a bit of a lost cause in North-South?
Well, you get this. Sometimes you get a small group of people who find a new idea quite challenging. And one's got to feel quite sympathetic for them, because you come to university to do different, I think is the motto, and to learn. And sometimes the innate conservatism of people who wouldn't ironically see themselves as being conservative at all shines through, and they find the idea of a new, genuine English radical party quite threatening. And so they shut down the idea of new thought in their minds, and they try to shut down debate on campus. But fortunately, people, when they make those mistakes, university is the place to come to make those mistakes, to learn, and I think most people realise that that was a wrong response in a free, liberal, academic environment. You've got to be open to new ideas, and if you disagree with people, you've got to engage and discuss. And in the age of Twitter, the idea that you can ban views from campus, it's now that really is reactionary.
So do you think Steve Evans could still get...
Absolutely. He's a good candidate. He's doing the right thing. And, there are a lot of voters out there, in Norwich South who, they voted Labour, and then they felt that actually Tony Blair's Labour Party didn't speak for them. They were appealed to quite strongly by Conservatives and by Liberals, and I think at various times the Greens have done rather well. I think that shows that actually there's a certain volatility in the local electorate. So I think anything is possible.
On your party website, it claims that subject to academic performance, UKIP would remove tuition fees for students studying STEM subjects, STEM degrees, on the condition that they live, work and pay tax for 5 years in the UK. Why is it specifically STEM degrees that you're looking at?
Well, I start from the position that, and it may be a bit unpopular, but it's what I believe in, that the principle of tuition fees, of allowing people to invest in themselves, is not a bad one. if you want to have world-class universities, you need to allow people to do that. However, one of the unintended consequences of the tuition fees proposal as it's been implemented has been to create a bizarre incentive, particularly for doctors, but others as well, to, in effect, get their degree, look at the pile of debt that they need to pay back, and actually think, do you know what, I'll be better off moving to Australia or Canada or somewhere else. So I think what UKIP's trying to do is to address that problem. In my own constituency, I had a meeting today at a GP surgery, and they've got a chronic shortage of GPs. In fact, the GP I was talking to is a first-class GP who trained in India and moved here 5 years ago from India. It's extraordinary that we are training people to be good GPs here, but then creating an incentive for them to actually go elsewhere rather than do their early years here. So I think what UKIP's trying to do is create a policy that addresses that unintended consequence of the tuition fees policy. I think it's also right. I think it's right that we say that there are certain skills that we need as a country, and if people have those skills, we'll collectively pick up the tab. But I wouldn't extend that to everything. I speak as a history graduate. I'm great respect to any other history graduates. We can't offer that to everyone.
Do you think that it doesn't sort of lessen the value of doing a humanities degree, or would detract people from doing humanities degrees, which are equally, as you say?
I genuinely believe that the most important thing we have is our capacity to think and our brain, and we should be free to invest in ourselves. And I think if you do that and you're willing to do that, it's right that you should contribute towards the cost of it, rather than expecting the general taxpayer to do it. Having said that, though, there are certain skills we need where I think it's right to say to the general taxpayer, actually, yeah, we are going to meet the cost of this. But if you have anything other than 100% universal state-funded higher education, you're going to have to draw the line somewhere, and I think it's right to draw it where UKIP's proposing to draw it.
The Union Council for the Union of UEA Students recently voted in favour of boycotting both Starbucks and Tate & Lyle, the sugar company, because of their tax avoidance. How would UKIP plan to tackle tax avoidance? Tax
avoidance is made possible. I hate to bang on about Europe, but you can't talk about tax avoidance without talking about our EU membership. Tax avoidance is possible because EU rules allow big corporations to choose in which jurisdiction in the EU they pay their tax. And until we leave the European Union, tax avoidance is going to be a growing feature of inequality and injustice. The reason why the European Union is so attractive to big corporate interests is precisely because it allows them a different tax regime to the sort of tax regime that people running local shops in Norwich have to pay. This is more evidence that the European Union, it's a big scam of big corporate vested interests. And tax avoidance is one of the things that makes it so attractive to the big vested interests that run it.
Right, yes. You kind of spoke about it a bit earlier. Unlike the big three political parties, to use a bit of a broad phrase, UKIP doesn't have a central whip. So do you think that this makes your party seem a little bit more genuine, or as though it feels though it can say what it wants to say? Or perhaps do you think that it also causes issues with party discipline, as you kind of also spoke about a little bit earlier?
Isn't it interesting where do we get this doctrine of party discipline from? I mean, what is a parliament? A parliament is a group of people who are elected by voters to represent them historically, to represent them against the crown who wants to spend our taxes and declare foreign wars and impose laws on us. Where do we get this idea that our elected representatives should be disciplined by an internal party machine? It's a modern invention. From 1701 to 1918, for 217 years, if you were elected to Parliament and you were invited to join the government, you know what you had to do? You didn't pick up a red box in number 10 Downing Street and smile for the cameras and head off to your new department. You had to resign your seat. You had to go back to your constituency and win a by-election to get permission from the voters to stay in Parliament. We had the equivalent of what in America they call a confirmation hearing, except in this country the confirmation hearing involved all of your constituents, those with the vote, albeit. We've created this idea that the furniture in Westminster should be arranged for the convenience of party bosses and the executive, and it is one of the reasons why this country, I think, regardless of which lot of muppets hold office, is so badly run. If you believe that the party discipline needs to be enforced, I think you've lost sight of the whole point of having a legislature. UKIP recognises that we do need whips. They're called voters. Now, there's a reason why everyone in this country, every candidate for public office in the May elections, will get given a taxpayer-funded election address. There's a reason for that. That is, you, the candidate, telling your voters what you're going to do. It's like a contract. And my view is very simple. UKIP will publish a manifesto. If our policy is in the manifesto and you stand on that manifesto, you'll be expected to vote that way. If you don't agree with the policy, put it in your election address and make it clear to the voters you don't agree with it.